$500. It's missing, and you were the only one here, the young executive said, his voice sharp. In the large office, the old janitor stood before the company's CEO, his hands trembling slightly. "Sir, I turned in everything I found," he answered quietly. The janitor felt the weight of their stares, not knowing his entire life was about to be judged by what was on a simple security tape. Just one night before, that life felt much simpler. Samuel Miller, a 58-year-old man from Chicago's Bridgeport neighborhood, pushed his cleaning cart through the silent halls of the downtown skyscraper. The squeak of the wheels was the only sound in the vast, empty space. His movements were slow but steady, marked by a slight limp from an old factory injury. Sam had a quiet dignity about him. He noticed things others missed: the faint coffee ring on a polished desk, the single paperclip that had fallen under a chair. This attention to detail was part of his job, but it was also just who he was. He took pride in leaving the sterile glass and steel offices of Sterling Corp looking perfect. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from his daughter. "Lily's fever is up again. The doctor mentioned another test." Sam's chest tightened. Medical bills were piling up, a mountain of worry that never seemed to get smaller. He put the phone away, his face etched with a deeper sadness. Earlier that evening, he had seen the young executive, Kyle Thompson, storming out of his office. Kyle was loud on his phone, bragging about closing a deal and how he'd celebrate by upgrading his Porsche Cayenne. He walked right past Sam, treating the older man as if he were invisible, a piece of the furniture. As Kyle rushed toward the elevator, he fumbled with his briefcase, and something dark slipped from his coat pocket, landing silently on the carpet. He never broke his stride. Hours later, while running the vacuum near that same office, Sam's observant eyes caught it. Tucked beside the leg of a desk was an expensive leather wallet. He picked it up. It felt heavy, important. He opened it carefully and saw the driver's license, Kyle Thompson. Behind the license was a thick stack of cash. Sam's calloused fingers trembled as he quickly counted the bills. There was over $1,000 there, more than enough to cover Lily's next test. For a moment, the world stopped. The hum of the building's ventilation system faded away. All Sam could hear was the frantic beating of his own heart. He thought of his granddaughter's pale face. He thought of the stack of envelopes on his kitchen table, all marked "past due." The temptation was a physical ache in his chest. His hand instinctively went to his back pocket, pulling out his own worn, cracked wallet. He didn't look at the few dollars inside. Instead, he carefully unfolded a small, creased piece of paper. It was a drawing made with crayons, a wobbly picture of a stick figure holding a balloon. At the bottom, in childish letters, it said, "I love you, Grandpa." A single, hot tear rolled down his cheek and fell onto the drawing. He wiped it away quickly. The battle inside him was over before it truly began. He carefully placed all the cash back into Kyle's wallet, snapped it shut, and walked with a determined step toward the security desk on the main floor. He handed the wallet to the night guard, filled out the lost and found form, and didn't think about it again. But the next morning, everything changed. He was called away from his duties and told to report to the top floor. He walked into the CEO's office to find Kyle Thompson standing there, his face a mask of smug certainty. That's when the accusation was made. "I checked it as soon as I got it back," Kyle said, looking at the CEO, Mr. Sterling. "Everything is there except for $500. He must have pocketed it, thinking I wouldn't notice." Sam felt the blood drain from his face. He was being called a thief. He tried to defend himself, his voice barely a whisper against Kyle's confident accusations. He looked at the CEO, Richard Sterling, a man he had only ever seen from a distance. Mr. Sterling's face was unreadable, his dark eyes studying Sam with a cold, analytical gaze. "Samuel?" Mr. Sterling said, his voice calm and firm. "Given the circumstances, I'm suspending you without pay, pending an investigation." The words hit Sam like a physical blow. Suspended, investigated. He felt the floor drop out from under him. He was led out of the office, his dignity stripped away, his future hanging by a thread. As Sam walked toward the elevator, the weight of the accusation pressed down on him. He felt the eyes of office workers on him, whispering behind their hands. He had worked at Sterling Corp for 10 years, never once taking so much as a paperclip. Now his reputation was destroyed in an instant, all because of a lie. He rode the elevator down in a fog of disbelief. The doors opened to the gleaming lobby, a place he usually took pride in keeping spotless. Today it felt like a foreign country. He pushed through the revolving doors and stepped out onto the busy Chicago street, feeling smaller and more invisible than ever. Back in his office, Richard Sterling sat behind his large mahogany desk. He looked at Kyle, who was checking his reflection in the dark screen of his phone. Something about the young man's smug confidence didn't sit right with him. Richard had inherited the company from his father, a man who started in the mailroom and valued integrity above all else. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Kyle?" Richard asked, his voice low and serious. "Accusing an employee of theft is a grave matter." Kyle finally looked up from his phone, a dismissive smirk on his face. "Of course I'm sure. These people see an opportunity, they take it. It's just how they are." The casual prejudice in Kyle's tone bothered Richard. He buzzed his assistant. "Get me Mark from security on the line." A moment later, a gruff voice came through the speaker. "Yes, Mr. Sterling?" Mark was the head of security, a retired police detective who had seen it all. "Mark, I need you to pull the security footage from the 45th floor last night, specifically the area around Mr. Thompson's office." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Sir, are you sure you want me to just send it up?" Mark's voice was hesitant. "Is this about Sam Miller?" Richard leaned forward, intrigued by the guard's tone. "It is. Why do you ask?" Mark cleared his throat. "Sam's been here 10 years, never a single issue. A man like that doesn't just start stealing. With all due respect, sir, you should see this for yourself." The sincerity in the security chief's voice made up Richard's mind. "All right, Mark, bring the tablet up to my office immediately. I'll review it myself." Richard hung up and looked at Kyle. "We're going to get to the bottom of this." Kyle just shrugged as if the outcome was already decided. He was more concerned with a text about a new Rolex submarine he was considering. A few minutes later, Mark arrived with the tablet. He handed it to the CEO with a respectful nod and left the room. Richard placed it on his desk, his expression unreadable. "Let's see what happened." He tapped the play button. Kyle leaned back in his chair, looking bored. The screen showed the empty hallway, illuminated by the dim overnight lights. They watched and fast-forward until Sam appeared with his cleaning cart. Richard slowed the footage to normal speed. He saw Sam vacuuming, his movements methodical and practiced. Then he saw him stop. The camera angle was perfect. It clearly showed Sam spotting the wallet. He picked it up, and Richard zoomed in on the janitor's face. He saw the flicker of surprise, then the moment Sam opened it and saw the cash. Kyle leaned forward slightly, a triumphant look on his face. "See? There it is." But Richard held up a hand, his eyes glued to the screen. He saw something else. He saw the conflict on Sam's face. He watched as the old man's hand went to his own pocket. He saw him pull out his battered wallet and unfold the small, colorful drawing. The camera was so clear, Richard could almost see the crayon marks. He watched as Sam stared at the drawing, his expression a mix of love and deep pain. He saw the single tear fall. It was a silent, heartbreaking moment of struggle. A man in desperate need, faced with a powerful temptation, choosing his integrity over his needs. Then Richard watched as Sam resolutely put his own wallet away, closed Kyle's, and walked away from the office. Richard Sterling felt a knot form in his stomach. He rewound the tape and played it again, this time watching Kyle's face. The young man's smug expression slowly faded, replaced by confusion, then shock. He had seen it too. The undeniable proof not of a crime, but of a profound act of honesty. Richard Sterling slowly turned the tablet around so Kyle could see the screen clearly. The silence in the luxurious office was deafening. "Explain this, Kyle," the CEO said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Explain to me why a man would look at a picture of his grandchild before deciding not to steal your money." Kyle's face turned pale. He stammered, "I don't know. Maybe he was counting it again. Maybe he—" But his words trailed off. The video was undeniable. Richard stood up, his tall frame casting a shadow over the young executive. "You didn't lose $500. You lied. You used your position to humiliate an honest man, perhaps the most honest man in this entire building," Richard continued, his voice rising with cold anger. "You saw him not as a person, but as someone beneath you. That is not what this company stands for." He pointed toward the door. "Clean out your desk. You're fired." He then called Sam and asked him to return to the office. When the old janitor walked in, looking defeated, Richard met him with a sincere apology. He showed Sam the video and explained everything. Tears welled up in Sam's eyes, this time from relief. Richard not only reinstated him, but also promoted him to maintenance supervisor with a significant raise. But the CEO did more. "My father taught me that character is worth more than any amount of money," Richard said. "Tell me about the drawing, Sam." With a trembling voice, Sam spoke of his sick granddaughter, Lily. Richard listened intently, then made a decision. He personally pledged to cover all of Lily's medical bills, ensuring she would get the best care possible. Sam learned that integrity has a value that cannot be measured in dollars. He saw that true wealth lies not in what you have, but in the person you are. Do you think the CEO did the right thing? Until the next story.